Thank you very much for inviting me here. Greatest thanks to the AACI for having me speak, for my ex-partner for inviting me, and mostly, just a very big honor and privilege to be here in the state of Israel. As you heard quickly about my life story, I spent many, many years abroad, and I really did long for Israel. And just to be here speaking to you in Jerusalem is really, really a very, very big mitzvah. Now, I'm going to show you two videos quickly about the Jacob sheep, and then I'll provide my own remarks. Okay.
Funny looking sheep.
Just sit straight, please. Gil, read the captions. Gil.
Yes.
Read them.
The exact breed Jacob took from Laban 30 years ago. Jenna speaking about the significance of the sheep.
Shit, we didn't have the sound. Gil,
Talking about the biblical description of the sheep. They're spotted and speckled.
Yeah.
do you want the sound?
It's fine, it's fine, it's fine. It's good when it's high, so when it goes down to people's heads.
Well, anyways, these are Jacob's sheep, what you see here in the video. And I'll quickly show you another video. This one. Just about the sheep landing in the land of Israel. 1 second. 1 second. Not this one.
These are Jacob's sheep.
Here. Channel 1. Let's see. Here. Now, this one is in Hebrew, so it won't matter. I just want to see the airplane land.
You mean the sheep on the plane? Does it more like plane? Those of us who understand Hebrew might want to hear it.
So here you'll see them land.
Gil from where?
Where did they come from?
They came from Canada on the 11th flight, so it was actually a record-breaking ordeal both for Canada and for Israel.
And for the airplane.
They came on these crates,
Yeah.
and it astonished the Israelis. They commented about their four horns. Okay, so I will end the video now. Okay, so we're here to speak about Jacob's sheep and about what they mean to us and to Israel. Now, I didn't know about Jacob's sheep until about 3 years ago. It sort of came to me, as it were, as I was living in Abbotsford. There were Gentile farmers that had Jacob's sheep. There was a heritage park near Vernon, BC, that had a flock of Jacob's sheep, but for whatever reason, the management changed, and the management didn't want the Jacob's sheep. So, through a friend of Jenna's, the first Jacob's sheep started coming to us. And it was either the sheep come to us, or they get liquidated.
Wow.
Now, it wasn't just in this heritage park in Vernon. Sheep across Western Canada were going through the same fate. It was not a very good economic time for Canada, still recovering from the Great Recession. Many farmers didn't know what to do with this flock of sheep, which is amazing as a heritage item, but has very little commercial value itself. So many of them thought this turned them into meat. Now, when I realized, and Jenna realized, that these sheep in fact did have a historical purpose, we rescued them. We in fact rescued flock after flock after flock, until we had about 70 Jacob sheep in a farm property in Abbotsford. These flock of sheep came from everywhere from near Vancouver to Saskatchewan. It was the largest flock of Jacob sheep of its kind in Canada. Now, why Jacob sheep? Now, everybody knows the Zionist story. Everybody knows it's important for, I'm Israel, the Jewish people, to return back home. But what many people do not know is that it's not actually complete. because we were not created just as a nation by ourselves. When Jacob went to work for his uncle Laban, in the story in Genesis 30:31, he earned sheep as his wages. First for, he had to work 14 years, first for one wife and for another. But it wasn't enough. God didn't tell him to go home after he had his 11 of 12 children with Leah and Rachel and 2 concubines. He had to go into arbitration with Laban. Why? He needed something for his own house. What was the idea for his own house? They were sheep. Not just any sheep, as the word of God mentions in Genesis 30, the sheep would be spotted and speckled, and banded as well. And as you see in these sheep here, it's hard to see them, but I can perhaps find a picture of them here online. This is the only flock of sheep that universally meets the description of the biblical flock in Genesis 30 and 31. I'm just going to give me a minute here. I'm going to see if I can find a good picture of Jacob's sheep. Now, some of it is of our flock.
What's different about that?
1 second. Let me find the picture. Okay, there's lots of good pictures here.
Wow, wow, wow.
Let's look at the picture. This is very good. Okay, let's open this one.
Wow.
Yes, these are Jacob's sheep. This is not our Jacob's sheep. This is a picture from the United States somewhere. Let's
It's a
see.
picture, no?
Yes. Can everybody see this picture? Okay. So what makes them unique? They have spots and speckles. You see this, you see on the sheep to the left, there's a spot there, right?
Yeah.
The speckles are harder to see, but you actually can see the patterns on their wool. On the skin itself, if you were to shear the sheep, over half the sheep have tiny speckles across their skin. Testament to the word that is written in Genesis. Now what does banded mean? The rabbis believe that bands, you see the sheep on this left has like a black and white patch on its knee going down. That's what a knee band is. Also, the sheep are horned. Now, the record in Genesis doesn't mention horned sheep. This you got to go to the prophets. And Ezekiel talks about horned sheep. He talked about the biblical sheep. Where the 4 to 6 horns come from is still a relative mystery. But there is a diagram of a 4-horned animal in Daniel, talking about the 4 great powers to be. Maybe that is an example of the Jacob sheep. We do not know. However, genetic testing has shown that these sheep have markers that trace them back to other sheep flocks that reside here in the Middle East. Even if the sheep are in North America or the sheep are in England, these sheep could more closely resemble, say, the AACI sheep you find here in Medat Israel than of sheep like other European brands. They also have a fatted tail. They have a dew claw on their 4 hooves, which is designed for mountain climbing. And they also have a slightly larger brain mass than other sheep. You can compare it almost to the Jewish people. We're known as a smart. So the sheep are also somewhat smart too. Their intelligence more resemble dogs than sheep in many regards. Like you can keep all the rams together, they won't kill each other. How do they know? They know where their place is in the social hierarchy. Normal rams wouldn't be able to tell, they just would fight till one wins. Now, why sheep? Now, in all honesty, we are great as Jewish people for many things. We keep the Torah. We have lots of Nobel Prizes. We built a beautiful country here in Israel, but we're not the animal people. Okay? Animal conservancy is not a forte of the Jewish people. Yes, we have a couple zoos here and there, but you don't hear much in the news that an animal conservancy project is something that we strive for. And in fact, with the sheep, this has been a testament of what we've experienced here in Israel. People think, Jacob, sheep, they think, okay, meat or milk. Are you going to shechita them? Are you going to slaughter them? Or are you going to milk them out? They don't think, okay, there's something unique about these animals, maybe they should be preserved. Well, at the end of the day, it's very, very hard to preserve animals, but it's something that, maybe the Jacob sheep are here to show Medat Israel, that we could be known also for animal conservancy, and not only for, for all the other amazing amount of things that Jewish people are known for. Now, Jacob sheep are also important for something else. And I'm sure most of you have heard of the Red Heifer Project, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So the Jacob sheep are part of, well, they're not the Red Heifer Project, but they're part of the same concept. Because, Jeremiah the prophet, he mentions there all happened when the ruins of Israel get rebuilt in Jeremiah 33. When the ruins get rebuilt, it is not enough for the people to return. Also, the seed of animal must also return to the land for this land to be truly blessed. And this is actually a theme that's not only mentioned in Jeremiah. Ezekiel talks about it, and Isaiah talks about it. Many other prophets across the Tanakh, you have mentions of this. So what does it mean? We need to have animals which we would use, which the Old Testament would use for blessing. So what is that? The red heifer is one of them. They need it to, it's mostly if you touch a dead body, and for ceremonies on the Temple Mount. We don't have a temple right now, by the way, but we should be ready. One day there might be, maybe not in our lifetime, but we should be ready for the day there is. The sheep are the other one. In fact, without the sheep, there can be no temple. There's two, what you call korbanot, sacrifices. You need to have sheep for that to work. If there's no sheep, the temple cannot function. You can have all the Temple Mount Institute, everyone, they can say whatever they want. The amazing part about building a temple, you don't have the animals in place, it's pointless. And so that's the part of what the Jacob sheep, it's not the near-term future, there's only 80 of them in the country right now, but you need to have the animals in place. Now that's what the concept is. Now, we can ask, okay, you can have the animals, why are we not shepherds? Well, that is a very good question. We all used to be shepherds. If you go way back, I'm talking about the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they're all shepherds. In fact, on Sukkot, we commemorate the 7 great shepherds that led Israel in ancient times. But what happened? We were dispersed around the world, first by the Babylonians, and then by the Romans, 500 years later. And with them, our culture of shepherding was pretty much lost and destroyed. Now, Ezekiel, the prophet, actually foreshadows this in Ezekiel 34, when he says that because of our sins and the way we took care of the sheep and other matters, God will take the sheep from us and we will cease shepherding them until a time when they will be returned from the nations and they will put on the hill, and then the Messiah will come and this country will be truly blessed. Now, that last part of that hasn't come yet. There's no Messiah, there's no temple, there's no this. But it's very clear from the writings in the Bible that it's important not just for us as Jewish people to be here, but also our animals. And by animals, what is more clear, than, except for the red heifer, than Jacob's sheep, the animal bred by Jacob himself. Now, that is a little bit of the history behind the biblical history, and also, the reason why we have to bring animals to Medinat Israel. But let's talk a little bit about the journey itself. We found the sheep, as we say, they were about to be slaughtered across Western Canada, and we saved about 70 of them. And then they had babies, they had their own lambs, and then the sheep 70 became 119. 119 is actually a very important number in Judaism. If you read Psalm 119, it's the longest psalm in the whole book. All the blessings are in Psalm 119, but basically, it's a perfection, is basically what 119 means. So, we brought 119. It was very difficult. We had to rely on support from many groups of people. Jewish community, they're not used to shepherding. They're busy, taking care of synagogues and small businesses and etc. And they're all the way out there in Vancouver. We're in Abbotsford, which is 70 kilometers or 50 miles east. So, they're doing their own thing. So we had to find our own way to take care of the flock. So we had locals assist. The Israeli ambassador, we turned to him. He was supportive. His name was Raphael Barak. He's now retired. He became perhaps the main agent of the state of Israel to push the thing through. Now, he believed in the story. He believed it's important for anything that was once part of Israel to return to Israel. So even though he had a lot of opposition, he pushed through with it till the end. And a lot of the reason why the sheep are actually here in Israel is because of the work of this ambassador that liked the idea and pushed it through. Now, after about a year and a bit, it became necessary to move the sheep. Now, there was a problem with moving the sheep. Now, Israel didn't have a past relationship with Canada with agriculture, especially with moving livestock. It's never been done before. So we tried. We contacted the agriculture ministry. They said no. Well, can they come as pets? No. Can they come as a one-time tourist exhibit? No. Can they come as a farm animal? No. So what to do? Well, the government changed. It was Yitzhak Shamir who was the minister then. There was elections, and then Uri Ariel, the current agriculture minister, came. And what made him unique is that he had a different vision than the previous agriculture minister. He wants a lot of what I mentioned before about the words of the prophets and the building of the temple to take place. Do not know how much that was in line, but likely it played a very big role in his general support of the initiative. Now, what happened? So you had to start working with the agricultural ministry. This was very challenging. There was a language barrier. The agricultural ministry is 15,000 kilometers away. We're dealing with a local CFIA office, the Food Inspection Agency, and had to, work back and forth. This was very challenging because, you have to do the work that diplomats normally do. What does this one say? There's a snag, then you have to go around the snag, try to find a way that's good for both parties. So it eventually was possible after many months. But Israel had a fixation on a disease called blue tongue. And blue tongue is a disease that affects mainly sheep, but it also affects cows. They get a blue tongue, basically they suffocate, and this is caused by small mosquito flies. This is transmitted. Canada almost doesn't have this disease, but Israel has this disease plenty. And in fact, tragically, the sheep would be afflicted by blue tongue half a year after they arrived in Israel. But because Israel didn't want another strain of this disease from North America, so the sheep had to all be put in nets. Like they're not the sheep themselves, but the facility they were in. So they always had to be in nets, so they had to be close to the airport where they would be leaving. You cannot fly them 4,000 or 5,000 kilometers away from Abbotsford. You have to move them closer to the main airport of the country that flies to Israel, Pearson International Airport from Toronto. So we were given our marching orders with a truck. We went behind the truck for 4 or 5 days by car. There's a story of a Corvette that was sold to fund this cross-country journey. We arrived in an area near Hamilton, Ontario, where a building was turned into a quarantine site for the animals with nets. Remarkably, during the course of the testing, every single sheep passed the test that Israel demanded of Canada. Now, this is remarkable considering this never has been done before. How can every single sheep pass all the tests when even the calibration equipment that Canada was using wasn't even set up for Israeli standards? How it happened? It was a course of 3-4 months in Hamilton, Ontario, and then the sheep were to leave. Now, there was other logistical challenges. First of all, Canada is not the United States. Now, I don't normally want to say anything negative about the country of Canada, but ability to freight in a large scale is something that is very difficult from Canada. You can do it from New York, you can do it from Los Angeles, you can do it from Chicago. To try to freight a whole herd of animals out of Canada just wasn't possible. So, after the Americans closed the border to us to use JFK Airport, we had to fly them out of Pearson. I saw in the video, the sheep arrived on Air Canada flights. Now, it wasn't just one flight, it was 11 flights. And this was the reason why it was record-breaking. Because there was a lack of oxygen supply for a herd of animals, they were using passenger aircraft to fly the sheep. So what this means is, there's enough for a few dogs and cats in there, but they're not calibrated to have enough air. So about 10 Jacob sheep at a time were flown from Pearson International to Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv.
Close the door.
Now this caused a humongous nightmare. Why? Israeli law states that when animals enter the country, they have to be also brought to quarantine. The quarantine normally lasts 8 days. But because there were 11 shipments of animals, you had to repeat this 11 times. And this has yet to be done before. So, the main quarantine center in the country wouldn't take the sheep for a month and a half to close the whole facility for this amount. Plus, it would have been an astronomical financial figure to keep them there for 6 weeks. So, a quarantine site was built for them makeshift in the Negev desert. The sheep were brought there by 11 trucks, one at a time, for over a month. This was a tin hut near Ofakim, not far from the Gaza border, during Israel's rainy season. So, the sheep were exposed to the elements, and in fact, this became an international news story in and of its own right. Let's see if I can find the international news story. The quarantine site flooded after massive rains, and 5 sheep died from the elements in the quarantine. The story quickly became international headlines. The sheep left quarantine early to a place called Nes Harim, which is in the Judean mountains, not far from here near Jerusalem. Now I see that Jenna has arrived, so I'll be happy to pass on the floor to her to tell the rest of the story.